How many students in the audience have an exam or a project due next week? How many teachers are feeling overloaded with stacks upon stacks of papers to grade? How many students are in the habit of harassing our teachers to grade our work faster, then contest the grades they report? How many parents are checking the online gradebook and putting pressure on their sons, daughters, and teachers to improve? Stress. It's an indiscriminate, inextricable part of our daily lives. Just as we're all equally capable of experiencing stress, we also all carry with us a toolkit that we can access and develop to help manage our stress. Some common tools in our 21st century toolkit might include denial or escapism into online media. It can become easy to reach for the same tools over and over again, with stress responses becoming patterned. Learning to cope with stress in healthier ways can actually reduce its effects and symptoms. If you ask any tradesperson, a few versatile tools, a hammer, a screwdriver, a lever, or a wrench can accomplish many common tasks. Although the more skill a job requires, chances are the more specialized tools we'll need. Stress functions similarly. Since there are endless causes and effects of stress, it's evident that the more tools we learn to apply and have accessible, the better equipped we'll become to handle a wider range of stress-related challenges. Understanding our body and how it reacts to stress is our first, most basic, and perhaps the most readily available tool. Like any challenge, to overcome it, we need to know the causes of our stress. As we encounter stressors, certain physical responses activate. R.C. McCarty, professor at Vanderbilt University, explores several nervous systems that function within our bodies. The sympathetic system responds to aggressive situations. Situations that trigger this response could be when a car or a bear is coming straight towards you. In response to a physical threat, you'll notice your heartbeat getting faster and your pupils dilate. Hormones adrenaline, cortisol, epinephrine, and norepinephrine will flood the system to increase strength and agility. Your body might have the tendency to hold your breath or hyperventilate to provide the energy necessary to think or move quickly, to take flight or stand and fight as a means of surviving such stressful moments. Once a threat is neutralized, the parasympathetic system comes online, promoting rest and digest responses to calm our panicked minds and bodies. This could happen when the car stops or the bear had accepted the sandwich you have offered to its direction. By this, your breathing will slow, your internal organs resume, and hormones neutralize. Your heart and thoughts will resume a normal pace. So we've seen that when we are stressed, certain physical responses activate without our realizing or consent. This can be problematic, for this day and age, as stressors tend to be more subtle and for many unceasing. Survival nowadays doesn't always hinge on whether we can escape from threats posing physical harm. Sometimes we are stressed and we don't even realize it, and it can keep us panicked for some time. Learning to read physical signs in our bodies can be helpful if we are to diagnose and treat our stress. Occam's razor claims that the simplest answer is often the best, and this inspires my first recommendation. It's perhaps not a new approach, but it's certainly simple. Become aware of your breathing. Our breath provides important data. If we notice that our breathing is quick or strained, chances are we're stressed. But did you know that we can trick an activated sympathetic system into relaxation by consciously slowing our breath? One exercise is recommended by Andrew Will, who holds a doctorate from Harvard University and is a variation of a time-honored yogic practice. It invites us to double the length of the inhale with the exhale. It goes like this. Inhale for 4 seconds, hold for 2 seconds, exhale for 8 seconds, hold the out breath for 2 more seconds, and then repeat. Let's practice. This practice should be repeated multiple times until stressful feelings pass. The simple reversal of literally hyperventilating will signal the body and brain to activate the parasympathetic nervous system, neutralizing feelings of agitation or stress. Talking about stress with a mental health professional, a family member, a friend, or a partner can be another useful tool, but what if your community doesn't welcome or normalize this strategy? I live and grew up in South Korea, where I and many of my peers especially seem to be having trouble talking about stress within a community that stigmatizes mental health issues. We, as teens, have a fear of being judged, whether it's our parents regarding our academic accomplishments or failures, our teachers evaluating our work, or peers competing for university seats. The fear of being judged, although it may appear quite common, is often exaggerated in the mind of a teen, especially when the stakes are high. South Korean students largely struggle to seek help from a mental health professional because previous generations have considered it shameful, and yet we haven't overcome this seemingly collective and static norm. And so, the inability to manage what can feel like mounting pressures in our lives can result in subtle or even severe mental health disorders such as depression and anxiety. In Seoul, the capital of South Korea, it's normal for students to stay around at school until 10 p.m. or even later, and then attend private academies long into the early morning. Students are acutely pressured to perform at an inhuman rate to qualify for the top-tier Sky or Ivy League universities. Mental health disorders, especially those who come from mismanaged stress, are no surprise. As a student attending an international school in Jeju, I'm also often reminded that I need to handle my personal and academic matters in a mature and independent manner. Like this, when people won't or can't engage in open discourse about psychological phenomena, we refer to this as psychological repression. People who are experiencing this cannot empower themselves because they're either passively or actively refusing to acknowledge its impact. So, we need to ask ourselves if one of the most common tools in our stress toolkits is repression or avoidance of stressful situations. Disrupting our destructive, often habitual responses needs both awareness and training. The work of Aaron Beck, professor of the University of Pennsylvania, explains the relationship between thoughts, feelings, and behaviors for what he refers to as the cognitive triangle. The shape, like any other triangle, is composed of 3 interrelated parts. The interactive relationship between these 3 elements is what forms and maintains the triangle. Each and every one of us have our own thought cycles based on our past experiences, and it's what creates and reinforces our current values, beliefs, and perspectives. Chances are, you, like me, are influenced by how your society does or doesn't deal with stress. Becoming able to acknowledge how we adopt these tendencies into our cycles can be helpful if we are to redefine our thoughts, feelings, and behaviors. Let me elaborate on this. If stress is brought on by fear, understanding common fears can help us address them. Back in middle school, I prepared for a business competition with my peers where I basically had to pitch an idea about an educational platform. that need to be presented and evaluated in front of upperclassmen and teachers. The day of the presentation arrived, and although I was fully prepared, I was sweating. My pupils were dilated and my heart rate quickened as waves and waves of anxiety washed all over me. There's a reason why an article by Forbes affectionately refers to the fear of public speaking as public sweating. Once I realized that I need to talk in front of so many important people, I experienced a moment of realization, which initiated my cognitive triangle. I went down the mental road of, what if I make a mistake, or what if everyone laughs at me, as these thoughts began to dominate my mind, affect my feelings, and they ultimately governed my actions. I remember feelings of anxiety crippled me from being able to effectively plan and execute the task in the time frame allotted. Worried and anxious feelings led me to avoid the situation rather than facing it. Instead of empowering myself, I turned to, shall we say, unhelpful alternatives. Although I had a clear goal of preparing for the presentation, I sat around all day doing nothing, wasting my valuable time on my phone and scrolling to nothingness. Turns out that it's not only me who struggles with procrastination. According to Ira Elise, a psychologist from the University of Columbia, 70% of US college students are also in the same boat. I cannot stress enough that avoiding our thoughts, feelings, and behaviors will not help us overcome them. In contrast, facing them will allow us to build stamina and confidence that is necessary to lessen future fear and anxiety when we face similar situations. And yet, the mind is tricky. There are some serious obstacles that threaten our ability to identify stress and access our tools. Sometimes we cannot interpret or read the situation as it actually is if we are experiencing cognitive distortion that our minds create when we are compromised. Different stimuli, including stress, can create inflated, irrational thoughts or beliefs that convolutes a person's perception of reality. Thought cycles based on past experiences can cause us to view obscure versions of reality, rather than judging it and viewing it as it actually is. Such responses could demonstrate polarized thinking, viewing circumstances in an obscured all-or-nothing manner, along with many other heuristics that could lead us to reach faulty conclusions. It can become easy to get carried away by these irrational thoughts that become assumptions. And when distorted, these assumptions become a fact that becomes cemented in our minds and influence our behavior. For me, it didn't take long for the thought of, I might make mistakes to turn to, I will make mistakes. So, what can we do with all this? Kelly McGonigal, a psychologist from Stanford University, offers a final mind tool. She claims that the way we perceive our stress is what defines its outcome. She reminds us that stress can be healthy because it allows us to work under pressure if we know how to manage it. If there were no stress, we'd perhaps get nothing done. Sometimes we are the ones who put ourselves back in the woods, facing a bear that may or may not even exist. McGonigal continues to emphasize that we need to view stress as data that's helping us prepare for a challenge. We need to view stress as a healthy human response that is needed to undertake arduous tasks. The simple act of changing your mindset from one of being triggered to one of acceptance and gratitude for the opportunity and data will help us rewire our response. Next, we need to look at the company we keep. Do you find the people you surround yourself with help or hinder your stress response? As a teen myself, I've observed that although at times I maintain a healthy stress response, shared stress can create tsunamis of newly shared emotions. Without realizing it, we can become affected by others' negative stress response, others' thoughts, feelings, and behaviors. When this happens, we can either allow the waves of others' choices to crash over us, or we can decide to diffuse them. So, if you see a person who's brooding in negativity, actively seek to reinforce positive thoughts, feelings, and behaviors in yourself first. Then others may follow. And if you're in a room full of people groaning about their stress, you may need to change rooms. Filtering out negative thoughts, feelings, and behaviors can and will help us rewrite our attitudes and responses to stress. So today, we've seen many tools we can access to combat stressful situations. Some of these tools you may already be in the habit of reaching out for, whereas others may seem a bit beyond your comfort zone. And yet, I promise you that a bit of practice and reinforcements will make them more accessible over time. Stress, like humans, has evolved. In day-to-day encounters, it may no longer take the form of a physical threat for survival, whereas it's a more subtle worrying that many of us feel ill-equipped to manage, subdue, or overcome. One constant remains. Humans continue to feel the impact of subtle and even sometimes major stressors on a daily basis. And yet, we do not need to let our own stress and the other's stress to overtake us. We can actively choose from our toolkits and rewrite our narratives about how we deal with stress. Just as a skilled engineer cannot fix every problem just by using the same hammer over and over again, the more tools we have accessible in our kits, the more adept we'll become at fixing ourselves. Thank you.